We're doing part 2 of a 2-part series with my in-studio guest, former representative from Minnesota's 6th District, Michelle Bachmann, and author, commentator, and just all-around extremely interesting guy, Phil Haney. We'll say more about his book a little bit later. And Michelle and Phil, last week, we covered some really interesting things, from the shadow government to organizing for action, the fact that Barack Obama is not going away. He's 2 miles down the street from the White House. He's continuing to do as much, I'm going to use the word damage, as possible. And Michelle, and you've been in politics a while. Ever seen anything like that?
No,
ever?
I mean, here his number one senior advisor for 8 years, Valerie Jarrett, who had been joined to the hip with him since his days in Chicago as a community organizer. It was announced that she moved into the Obama's home, which is the headquarters, essentially, for this organizing for action in America. So clearly have not stepped back like most presidents do. They take a little time off. They write their book. We have found out that the Obamas are getting $65 million for the books that they plan to write. But more importantly, they plan to continue, without skipping a beat, their agenda of radically transforming the United States. We need to recognize that they have a strategy, but we need to have a strategy too. And our strategy is to live in the light of the gospel and to radically transform this country and the world toward the gospel with the freeing, liberating power of Jesus Christ.
Amen. We were talking a little bit off air, and Phil Haney, and you have both of you have such interesting stories, but you were originally part of the first Department of Homeland Security, and apparently people wanted to make you an example. And just talk to us just for a minute or two about that, because they tried to block everything they did block everything you tried to expose by way of Homeland Security. Not everyone knows your book.
Well, the first time I became aware of there was an emerging problem was in early 2006. I had written an article, open source article, called Green Tide Rising, Hamas Ascends, posted it on the Front Page magazine. And it wasn't long afterwards I got a call from what we call an internal affairs collateral duty officer up in Newark, New Jersey, who was going to come down and interview me because I was accused of unethical use of classified information in writing this article on Hamas. Well, let's stop right there. I was a sworn federal law enforcement officer with expertise in strategy and tactics of the global Islamic movement, well known in counterterrorism, interviewing terrorists, and I'm told that I'm going to be investigated for writing an open source article about a globally designated terrorist organization called Hamas. And it happened. He came down, he interviewed everybody in what we call the horizontal chain and my entire upward chain of command. After 11 months, I was exonerated of no wrongdoing, but this was in 2006. And being an optimistic kind of person, I thought, well, I guess that's over and done with, and we'll just keep going on. Little did I know that was only the beginning. I ended up being investigated by my own administration, my own government, my own agency 8 more times during the course of my career, and culminated my career under investigation from 3 simultaneous branches of the government: the Department of Justice, Customs and Border Protection, and Department of Homeland Security. And it wasn't for a moral lapse or a failure to obey a command or abrogation of duty. It was for putting information into the system that the Obama administration considered a violation of the Privacy Act of foreign nationals and/or, I should say, the privacy rights of foreign nationals and/or a violation of their civil rights and civil liberties.
Do you think, now, first of all, we can say radical Islam now, at least some in high leadership are saying radical Islam. Do you think that the FBI manuals, training manuals and everything will eventually go back to telling the truth, since that was blocked for so many years?
Of course, that's our hope, and let me tell you how bad it actually got. The official FBI training manual says on the second page of paragraph 2, I think it was around 2012, that just because an individual is affiliated with a known terrorist organization, we're not allowed to assume that that person may be a terrorist himself. Now, how do cops do their job when you have restrictions like that?
Right.
But do I hope that it will improve? I sure do. You know, we all do, I believe. And as the indicators are that these kind of things are going to be improved as we go forward.
Yeah, well, but I think one of the things we've been talking about both on air and off air and that is the power of the federal government. I mean, it's truly, it's a very serious thing. And Michelle, we've learned recently here that there are some efforts that possibly our privacy may not be as private as we'd like to think. There's been talk that cell phones, emails, etc., are being monitored very carefully. At the same time, we had Hillary Clinton absolutely recklessly dealing with her email server, etc. So such a dichotomy in this world in America. I mean, you've got the far extremes here.
We do, and part of it is with the federal government or state governments, and another part really is with private industry. If you look at Facebook and Google,
Yes.
and just our credit card data being hacked into, our government has been hacked into, the CIA, Social Security departments have been hacked into. So I think that it's safe to say that we're living in a day and age where it is a great dichotomy, where we have the death of privacy on one hand because of digital invasion into our lives, but on the other hand, we have some of the greatest security restrictions we've ever seen, and it really ultimately comes down to personal integrity and character, and whether or not people who are given positions of great authority and power in our government are willing to act within the constraints of their positions.
But you were saying here off air a little bit about the possible hacking with Donald Trump, etc. You were very passionate about that, really passionate about that incident. Talk to us a little bit about your feelings.
We were told very clearly, beginning at the end of the election by Hillary Clinton, she and the media were suggesting, more than suggesting, that Donald Trump was colluding with the president of Russia, Putin, and Russian authorities to throw the American election, not by actual votes at actual ballot boxes, but by the Russians hacking into American ballot boxes and changing the election. There's absolutely zero evidence of that, and Democrats now even have admitted that. And yet this false message was repeated so many times for months and months and months in the American media that it was a propaganda cudgel to make the American people think that was true. Then Donald Trump came out, if some people remember, and he said, look, I've been surveilled by the federal government. And it actually came out that the Obama administration applied for what's called FISA court warrants. The Obama administration, now listen to this, this is huge. The Obama administration actually surveilled Mr. Trump's, in the Trump Tower, his server, so that the entire campaign was run through the Trump Tower, through that server. So the sitting administration,